Hello again, friends. We are sitting down for a video that I am so excited to be finally filming. A few weeks ago, I did a video that was an introduction to genital piercings here on YouTube, just kind of talking about why people get those piercings, what goes into getting those piercings, all sort of things. I also did a video about piercings and my experience as someone who is non-binary and the way that piercings can really help with gender affirmation. And I know, very requested on both of those videos, everyone was like, Lynn, please talk about gender-affirming piercings specifically for trans and non-binary folks. So that is what we are talking about today, and I'm going to kind of lightly touch on a bunch of different piercings, but the primary focus of this video is going to be on genital piercings for gender affirmation. Before we get started, I do think it's worth noting that genital piercings are typically gender affirming for just about anyone who is getting them. Whether you're cis, whether you're trans, whatever the piercing is going to be, there's usually an element of gender affirmation. And what I mean by that is that these piercings are affirming your gender. So for example, if you are a cisgendered woman and you have some insecurities surrounding your breasts, but your breasts are still very much a part of your womanhood, a part of your gender, a part of your femininity, opting to get your nipples pierced and the confidence boost that that can give, the way that that can make you happy in your body, excited about your body, love your body, that's gender affirmation. A cisgendered man who deals with insecurities about his penis, maybe about size, maybe about function, maybe about circumcision, who gets a genital piercing that makes him feel more at home in his body, makes him feel more confident, helps with sexual interactions, that's a gender affirming piercing. So piercings inherently can be gender affirming for folks of all genders, but today I'd like to specifically talk about affirming piercings for trans and non-binary folks. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Lynn, I get that like piercings can be gender affirming, I get what you mean about like nipple piercings and genital piercings, but is it really like that big of a difference? And I am here to tell you that it 100% unequivocally can be like a literal massive difference in how you feel about your body, about your self-confidence, the way you interact and exist in your body. Piercings and tattoos and other forms of body modification up to and including things like plastic surgery and hormone replacement therapy all have the ability to create amazing euphoria for the people who wear them or do them and really help people feel more at home in their bodies. And I think there's really no greater example of this than earlobe piercings. I mentioned it in my video about my experience as someone who's non-binary with piercings, but one of my first experiences with something that was very heavily gendered was also my first experience with piercings, and it was getting my ears pierced. I had my ears pierced first when I was a little bitty baby infant, and unfortunately those did not work out, so I had to get them again as a young girl. But ear piercings, especially for really, really young girls, even down to babies and infants, are a very strong, very gendered act. In a lot of cultures, piercing the ears of little girls is a big rite of passage that's directly associated with their gender, their femininity, and their womanhood. And for many of us growing up as little girls, getting our ears pierced and being allowed to have earrings was this big coming of age, this rite of passage. We looked at our moms and our grandmas and our sisters and our aunts and our teachers and our classmates who were able to wear earrings, and there was something so like empoweringly feminine and beautiful about that process. And that sensation is absolutely still there for trans women when they often get their first ear piercings. And that can be a huge rite of passage for trans women, the same way it is for little girls when they get their ear pierced. There's something about the experience that is exciting, it's also nervous. There's something about getting up and looking in the mirror and seeing those earrings in your ears in that way and just feeling like, it's just this moment of embracing and taking your own womanhood and femininity into your hands and celebrating that through piercing, through getting your ears pierced, through now having the ability to wear these earrings, this symbol in our society that is so decidedly a feminine rite of passage. Now, I think that's obviously like a very obvious example when we talk about gender affirmation and body piercings. I think a lot of folks' first thought, especially when it comes to trans folks, is like a trans woman getting her ears pierced. But what I would like to talk about in this video is really specifically genital piercings for folks who are trans and non-binary. Now, like I talked about in the intro, and like I talk about in my intro to genital piercing videos, genital piercings in general tend to have a pretty gender euphoric, gender affirming effect, kind of no matter who's getting them. But that effect can be so strengthened for folks who are trans and non-binary, and so powerful. A lot of folks do deal with dysphoria surrounding their genitals. Sometimes it is intense enough that their plan is for bottom surgery down the line, but sometimes bottom surgery isn't what's right for a lot of folks. Maybe it's not necessarily something that's in the cards, maybe it just doesn't fit for your lifestyle, or it's not something you feel that you need, but there can still be those feelings of dysphoria that linger. Also, for some folks, bottom surgery can be something that's years and years away from happening for them. And in the meantime, they're just stuck with these genitals that they're not really happy when they look down and see. And piercings can be a really great way of either empowering them while they have those genitals still, or helping the genitals that they have and plan to keep be something that suits their body more. I could spend literally 2 hours talking about the emotional element of genital piercings and the ways that they can be empowering and all of that stuff, but I did touch on a lot of that in my intro to genital piercings video, so if you haven't watched that, definitely go watch that for sure. And if you want to see me do just a whole video about that, totally let me know in the comments, because it's something I will. But I also want to spend a good chunk of this video talking about the functionality of gender affirming genital piercings, especially for trans and non-binary folks. And that is that, yes, there's this emotional empowerment element of taking your body into your own hands when it comes to these piercings, but there are a lot of piercings, depending on your goals and your genitals, that just literally create a functional difference. If you haven't already, there's a really amazing guest blog post on my blog. I'm going to link it in the caption of this YouTube video. It's from one of my own clients, Happy, who is a fantastic, beautiful, wonderful trans femme person living in the South. And for them, their experiences were not always the greatest surrounding being someone who absolutely does not fit the gender binary. For Happy, and I think for a lot of us who are non-binary or trans, we can be just inundated with this feeling of not being enough. We are so obsessed with passing and this one path to transition of hormones, top surgery, bottom surgery, that's how it has to look, that I think we can oftentimes internalize a lot of that negativity, and it can make it really hard for us to feel affirmed in our gender. So Happy came to me and we decided to do a PA, or Prince Albert piercing, for them. And these piercings have a lot of great functions sexually for clients and their partners. They can be really aesthetically pleasing, and they do also have a side effect, since they pass through the urethra, of sometimes making the process of urination a little bit more difficult. So a lot of clients adopt what I like to call the PA lean when they're at a urinal, or they choose to sit to urinate because that's what's more comfortable for them. And in Happy's instance, that was the case. Sitting for urination with their PA just made a lot more sense. And there was something so feminizing for them about having to sit to go to the bathroom, right? There's all this debate, all this discussion, all these awful politicians and fear-mongering conservatives surrounding the trans bathroom discussion, that it can make it incredibly hard for trans folks when it comes to bathroom usage, especially for trans femme and trans women. And it's so overwhelming. And so for Happy, getting this piercing and now just functionally needing to sit to use the bathroom was so amazing emotionally for them, and helped them feel like they belonged so much better in spaces, even in spaces like at Icon, where we had completely gender neutral bathrooms. There was still a feeling of wariness, of discomfort using the bathroom and standing like that. And yes, you could opt to sit, but there's something so different about going, I have this piercing and I have to sit now. There was something so feminizing about that being the action that was now required, that now made the most sense. Sure, you could stand to go, but it would make a lot more of a mess, the same way it would if someone with a vulva stood, and it can often make a lot more of a mess. So this piercing required sitting for them. It doesn't for everyone, but it did for them, and that was honestly the desired outcome. And again, I really strongly suggest you read their guest blog post on my website. They put it into words far more eloquently than I can, but it's just such an amazing example of the literal functionality of some of these piercings. And functionality can be across the board. I've had a number of trans feminine clients who didn't have any plans for bottom surgery, but just wanted to feel a little bit more feminine and cute, who got a bunch of genital piercings that we then anodized their jewelry to bright pink. We put cute opals and little hearts on the jewelry. Everything was just like maximum over the top, cute, pretty, feminine. And for them, looking down at their genitalia, and instead of just seeing a penis, they now saw these piercings with these pretty opals in these pretty colors in this very feminine setup, and for them that was so feminizing for their genitalia that was all that they felt that they needed. They looked at that and they were like, screw bottom surgery, like I like the equipment that I have, I like using it, but I want it to be over the top girly, over the top feminine, over the top cute, and that's what we did. And it was awesome, and it was so amazing watching each time she came in, her getting more and more comfortable being exposed and having those genitals out because they felt more like they were hers. The first appointment we went to, it took us quite a while to get the clothing off, and that's pretty normal. There's a lot of intimidation surrounding being nude and exposed in front of a stranger, but also I can't pierce without seeing what I'm piercing, so there's also not really a way around it. But towards the end, she would come in, and before I was even fully done closing the door, she was lifting up her skirt and going, look how well it healed, or look, we put in the new jewelry, or look how cute it's doing. And I got to watch her over the course of the year become so excited and so in touch with genitalia that previously never felt right, and that was amazing. Bouncing back to a more basically functional note, a lot of genital piercings can give new sensations and new stimulations, and for a lot of my trans femme clients, we do things like Prince Albert's, Apodravias, and Ampelangs, piercings that pass through the urethra. These can give really unique sensations during sexual interactions. A lot of my clients describe the sensation of something in the urethra as giving a different form of stimulation and pleasure that they find feels like it suits them more, and a lot of times for clients who are on HRT, that can cause some shrinkage in that area and can also cause issues with achieving erection. And for those clients, the new sensations afforded them through their piercings and the functionality of their piercings, both for themselves and their partners, actually actively helped prevent those issues with erection and some of that shrinkage, because the piercings were this new sensation that kept everything going exactly the way they wanted it to. And it's so amazing to get to be able to do those piercings and offer that for clients, especially clients who I've known throughout the course of their transition, who I've watched come out and then grapple with the decision for HRT and then opt to start it, especially clients for whom the sexual side effects of HRT, things like struggling with erection and things like shrinkage, were like a really big concern of transitioning for them, because they did want to transition, but they didn't have any plans for bottom surgery and they didn't want HRT to affect their genitals that much. We can't pick and choose what results we get on HRT, but piercings were undeniably instrumental in some of my clients' journeys as far as like keeping their genitals active, using them, and providing new sensations that kind of helped counterbalance what was happening with their HRT. Now, those are just some examples of piercings and work that I've done for trans women and for some of my trans femme clients. Everyone's situation is going to be different, so if you're interested in getting work like this, the first step is always going to be a consultation with your piercer to see your anatomy, see what works for you, and also discuss your goals, because everyone's goals are going to be unique and different. Just because these piercings were affirming and helpful for some clients doesn't mean that they will be for all clients, so that's always worth noting. Now, I don't want to leave anyone out. Let's talk about some of the cool work that I've done for my trans men and my trans masculine clients. The project that I'm probably most notable for online, and when we talk about functionality when it comes to gender-affirming genital piercings, also one of the projects that I think was the most functional, was I did a series of pretty large outer labia piercings for one of my clients. And when I say large, we did do them larger gauge, they were done at a 6 gauge, but we also did them with larger diameter rings. This was perfect for healing, but then once they were fully healed, as opposed to downsizing, we actually put in even bigger diameter rings. Now, they weren't comically large, especially not with the client's anatomy, but they were definitely bigger than the average client would wear. And because they were bigger, they did kind of just get in the way a little bit more. These are piercings that I have worn myself and that many of my clients wear, and anyone with these piercings can tell you they can definitely get pinched and caught up in your clothing, especially your underwear, super weird. You gotta kind of like adjust things from time to time. I've definitely had plenty of clients have to tweak the type of underwear that they wear to feel comfortable with these piercings. A lot of times if you're wearing bigger jewelry, especially like during initial healing, you have to wear more full coverage underwear because things can slip out otherwise. And you just have to be more careful about how you're moving and stuff. You have to oftentimes sit with your legs a little bit wider, and you might walk a little bit differently with that larger jewelry to allow it to sit comfortably. All in all, if you're going to wear really large jewelry like that, you have to spend a lot of time accommodating for that jewelry. It can get pinched, it can get caught. You got to wear underwear that allows for it. You got to move your body in a way that gives that jewelry and those piercings space. And I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of a huge hassle. I did this project for this client and I put these rings in, and he messaged me a couple of days later and he was like, Lynn, they're so annoying. I've caught them on my pants like 4 separate times, and I'm having to like totally change how I sit when I drive my car, and I've never been happier. And the reason being is that balls do that. They get in the way. You have to be careful not to sit on them. You have to do the adjustment in your underwear. You have to sit accommodating for them. You have to dress accommodating for them. And for this client, that's what they wanted the experience of. Thanks to their situation at work and also just personal medical background, bottom surgery was not in the works for them. And honestly, they weren't too worried about it. They were mostly happy with the genitalia that they had. However, the one thing that they really did wish that they had was that experience or feeling of, as they like to call them, the family jewels. And they came to me with this piercing project in mind, and I was like, let's try it. And it worked way better than I ever could have anticipated. Now, I will be completely honest, the first couple of weeks with the big rings were pretty tough for him. He definitely had to relearn how to walk, how to sit. He bought a bunch of different boxers to figure out what was comfortable to fit the rings in. It was just a whole big learning curve and process, as it would be if anyone woke up tomorrow morning with balls after never having them. But after a few months, he settled into a routine that worked for him. He found boxers that worked right and were comfortable. He figured out body positioning that worked, and there were these subtle masculinizing effects that these piercings had, that he sat with his legs a little wider, didn't cross them the same way, that he walked with his stride a little differently, thinking about that jewelry there, that the boxers that he was now wearing helped change his movement and things like that. And it was amazing. We're still in communication even years after we finished the project, and he still tells me all the time how they're his absolute favorite piercings ever, and he would never change anything about them, even the size of the jewelry, for the world, because he finds it so affirming and so amazing. And what used to be the annoyance of, oh, Lynn, they got caught in my underwear again today and it hurt, is now the confidence to be standing there in public and do that little adjustment and know that you have something there that you're adjusting and that it feels right. And it's just, I have no words to describe it, but I do wear these piercings myself. I don't wear them big like that. My jewelry taste leans differently and my setup is different, but I've had to make those adjustments too, and woo, let me tell you, it is very affirming to do that. Now, I talked about this project on TikTok a while ago, and that video went really viral, and I've since had a number of trans men and trans masculine clients seek me out for similar projects. Not everyone wanted to go with the super huge rings once they were healed. Like I said, they are annoying. They get in the way. They can get caught and be uncomfortable. That's kind of the idea behind the bigger rings, because they're supposed to mimic a scrotum. But quite a few clients have, and it has been so cool to watch the feedback roll in and so cool to watch the things that folks are excited about. I have clients sending me pictures of them sitting or walking around and talking about like just tiny changes to everyday movements that you don't even think about that have happened because of these piercings that make them feel so much more at home in their bodies. And for even my clients who didn't want to go with the large rings, who just wanted to go with the piercings in general, just discuss things like the sensation of the weight of jewelry in their clothing, feeling so much more affirming, and just like mentally, subtly, what that feeling of something there has done for them. I had one client who messaged me and said that he doesn't even use a packer anymore because the whole reason why he packed was like feeling that presence in his pants, and he's like, I get that from my piercings now, and they move with me naturally, they flow with me naturally, they just, everything, like it's a part of me, I feel it connected to me, and it does what I wanted my packer to do, but like a million times better. Now, obviously, that's just one specific example when it comes to trans men and trans masculine genital work. There's lots of different things. And the cool thing when we're talking about doing this work for trans men is that a lot of times these are clients who are on HRT, and HRT comes with a lot of bottom growth. This is really cool because bottom growth often allows you to have anatomy for genital piercings that you otherwise wouldn't. I see a lot of folks who never could have gotten things like triangle piercings or true clitoral piercings or multiple horizontal hood piercings who are now able to because of the growth that they've had through HRT. So we can get really, really creative and have a ton of fun with cool, unique projects for clients who are on HRT and have had that bottom growth. Really popular for me to do in that realm are triangle piercings. These are piercings that pass horizontally underneath the shaft of the clitoris, and when they're fully healed and they are tugged or moved or played with, they allow stimulation from behind, which you literally could not physically stimulate or contact without this piercing and this placement. So they're generally considered one of the most, if not the most, functional genital piercings that we do. And a lot of times, after a couple years on HRT, clients are a really good candidate for this piercing. And for a lot of clients, the sensation that this piercing provides is so incredibly functional. And I've had clients get super creative. I've had clients come up with custom jewelry that allows their triangle to be used for stimulation while they're using a strap. I've had clients come up with, custom pieces that they've used with different devices, different toys. This is such a stimulating, such a functional piercing that the sky is the limit. There is a ton that you can do with this creativity-wise. Aesthetics-wise, too, triangles tend to heal better and be more stable at larger gauges, and especially if you have quite a bit of bottom growth, we can oftentimes pierce them at a relatively thick size, and a lot of clients love the look and the feel of a big, chunky ring right there. And there really is something to be said for feeling that weight of the jewelry and also the subtle movement of the jewelry during the day. Now, genital piercings aren't magic. You're not going to get your triangle and put a big ring in it and feel it move during the day and just be having an experience right there on the spot. But you are going to be able to feel the sensations of the jewelry moving as you're moving and moving with your clothes. And while I wouldn't describe it as a stimulating sensation, it's a sensation that you're aware of, and that subtle awareness for a lot of clients does the same thing that things like wearing Packers and things like that do, only it's actually connected to your body and to a really sensitive part of your body. So a lot of clients say that their triangle piercing is the thing that makes their bottom growth really feel like a penis. In that same vein, that sensation of jewelry, that weight of jewelry, and also just the aesthetic and the look of a lot of chunky jewelry. I do have a lot of trans men and trans masculine clients who get multiple larger gauge genital piercings. If you look at my portfolio, you'll see some cool double and triple HCHs, some big sets of inner and outer labia. We do all sorts of fun, cool stuff, and the look of all of that metal jewelry and the sensation of it can be really, really, really empowering. Now, just like I mentioned when we were talking about piercings for my trans women and my trans feminine clients, the same thing goes when we're talking about piercings for my trans men and my trans masculine clients. Some of what I've described in this video might end up working out amazing for you and you might love it. Some of what I've described in this video might not work for you at all and you might hate it. You also might not have the anatomy for some of these piercings. So anytime you're thinking about doing work, especially intimate work like genital piercings, and especially if you're looking for them for gender affirmation, please find a piercer who's really experienced in this area and get a consultation done so that you can see what you do or don't have the anatomy for, and also what's going to actually give you the look and the effect and the function that you're looking for. Now, while we are discussing this, I think it's important to note that just because a piercer offers a lot of genital piercings doesn't necessarily mean that a piercer is equipped to do genital piercings for someone who is trans or non-binary. HRT absolutely does change and affect our bodies, especially our genitals. So you need to make sure you're seeking out a piercer who has experience not just in genital piercings, but in genital piercings for folks who are on HRT or who are transitioning. Folks who, A, understand the changes that HRT and other medications and other practices are going to cause to your body, binding, packing, tucking, whatever the case may be, but also piercers who are more informed to be able to actually give you advice about piercings that will work for gender affirmation. A piercer who's just really experienced at genitals but doesn't necessarily know what could work for what affirmation, what would provide what sensations, may end up steering you in the direction of piercings that just work for clients in general, but aren't necessarily what you as a trans or non-binary client are looking for from that piercing. So definitely do your research and find a very trans-friendly, a very queer-friendly piercer who's got some good portfolios with a lot of this content where you can see that they've worked on trans bodies before, that they know and understand what they're doing, and they're gonna take good care of you and be safe with you. I know for a lot of folks as well, a big element of inspiration when it comes for this is seeing what this kind of work looks like on other genitals. And I'll be honest, now that BME isn't as much of a thing anymore, you don't see as many more extreme genital projects posted online or as accessible. And that can make it hard for people to get inspiration as far as like what's possible or what's out there. I see a lot of clients who have this very narrow picture in their brain of what genital piercings look like, and I start showing them portfolios or pictures, and they're just like, you can do that? I didn't even know you could do that. That looks so cool, or that looks like what I want, or that sounds like the function is what I want. So doing research really helps. My portfolio obviously has a bunch of good examples of different genital piercings and a lot of different genital work on trans folks. There are parts of BME that are still live and up where you can go and view that, and that's a super great resource to see people who've really committed to like very large, very heavily pierced projects. There is so much good source material there. And then there are a lot of books and publications in print where you can see really the breadth of what people have done with their genital piercings. Most of them were published in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They can be a little tricky to get your hands on today, but they do still crop up. And also another really good resource is Sacred Debris. It's a Patreon website and publishing group that catalogs body modification and body piercing and tattoo history. And there is a really big focus on queer and gay culture throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s and how it affected piercings. And there's a lot of great documentation on the Patreon and in the books of people who've really pushed the boundaries of what they're doing with their genital piercings. Now, it's worth noting that a lot of this content is going to be older, so you may read quotes from the wearer that do not use modern language when it comes to gender identity, sexuality, things like that. And I just encourage you to remember that these folks were using the language that they had at the time. And if you are going to explore sacred, to understand that you may see some outdated terms and language in the effort of preserving accurate quotes from the person with the piercings or the person performing them that were done at that time. But there is a ton of good resources and references on Sacred Debris. I will link the Patreon in my comments here. So I really just kind of wanted to give like a brief-ish, I don't actually know how brief this is going to end up being, knowing me, probably not that brief, introduction, follow-up with genital piercings to specifically the types of affirmation that we can, as piercers, can provide for our trans and non-binary clients when it comes to getting genital piercings and the ways that they can function and work for folks. I'm filming this literally like the day or two after I got back from my guest spot in Florida, and I wanted to sit down and film this now because at the very beginning of my guest spot I did 2 days of genital piercing training work with Margot, my best friend and the piercer at Sweet Leaf, and overwhelmingly the majority of our clientele for that were queer folks who were trans or non-binary. And I cannot tell you how many times I have cried over the last 2 weeks since we did those piercings because of the messages that I have been getting from all of you telling me how you wake up and you are excited about that part of your body, letting me know that you're looking in the mirror and you're happy with what you see for the first time in an incredibly long time. Even those of you who've messaged me to complain that you've bought 4 different pairs of new boxers or new underwears to make things comfortable, but you are so excited to be having those problems. Every time I get to do these piercings, and especially in any like larger amount, I am reminded of how much we as piercers get to impact and touch our clients' lives. And it's crazy to be in communication with some of you and see, even in just a few weeks since we've done these piercings, the way that your confidence has changed, the way that your communication has changed, the way that it is so plain to see how happy you are in your body and how empowered you are in your body. And it's just amazing. For me as a non-binary person, one of the things that I love about my genital piercings is that it makes things feel more ambiguous. like what I have going on between my modifications, my piercings, my tattoos, etc. does not look like what you see when you look at a diagram or you look at a picture on the internet or you look at porn. And I like that my genitals have a feeling of uniqueness and ambiguity outside of the gender spectrum. For others, they may be specifically desiring a masculinizing effect through piercing or a feminizing effect through piercing. They may have certain goals that they want to look for, or they may want to play with those stereotypes that make them feel good. The really cool thing about this is that just like there's no one-size-fits-all body jewelry or one-size-fits-all piercing aftercare, there's no one-size-fits-all path to how these piercings are going to work for you. But if this is something that you're interested in or you're considering, there are so many clients who find so much empowerment and euphoria through getting genital piercings, and I would encourage anyone who's curious about it to do some reading and research and see if it's something that might work for you. I'm going to link a really amazing in-depth blog I did about this subject that goes over things a little bit more like on the piercing side of things. It goes over like breakdowns piercing by piercing of what they are, how they heal, how they're affected by HRT, and the functions that each piercing can provide, and also just some basic factual information about how HRT can affect things like different body piercings, things like that, and also how things like binding and packing can affect stuff. Just kind of a general guide to body piercings for trans and non-binary folks. I co-wrote it with the amazing Lars Marsh, who pierces at Lucky's in Boston. They're fantastic. I'm going to link that in the comments down below, and if y'all like this video and if this is a topic y'all want to see me address more and talk more about, let me know and ask me any good questions in the comments section. As per usual, it was so wonderful sitting down and chatting. This is a subject that I'm so incredibly passionate about, and I am so grateful that I get to share with so many of you. Have an awesome day, and I can't wait till we hang out again soon.